right across the table from me is my beautiful wife, Krystal. Say hello, babe.
Hello, everyone.
And Jason and Jennifer, Zach.
Hello.
That's awesome. Okay, so tonight it's like 70 degrees outside. It's unseasonably warm. We had last week I was trapped in I was trapped in DC last week, and then this week now Snowmageddon. Yeah.
This week, good layout.
This week, yeah, literally. Could have wore shorts yesterday to Sophie's ball game. So crazy weather. We got a little pizza decaf going today, and we have no sugar in our coffee because we're not doing any sugar, and the Zacks aren't either, which they don't normally do sugar anyway. But none of us have any sugar, so.
So we might be falling asleep.
We might be falling asleep. It's a true story. Sorry, I'm adjusting my sound here just a little bit.
Technical problem.
So a little caveat on the warm weather. Jennifer, we went into Lowe's the other day, and yesterday, Jennifer was so excited because they have outdoor furniture.
Oh.
Yes.
It's time. It's time.
Yes, it's almost time for summertime.
Sorry. Carry on for just a moment.
So winter is almost over.
Yeah.
Praise the Lord. You know
Praise
what,
the
though?
Lord.
It makes me sad because I love winter and I love the
Why do
clothes.
you love
I love
winter?
the sweaters and the scarves and the boots. But the first break of warm like this, I'm like, okay, I'm done. I'm ready for flip-flops and T-shirt.
Yeah, you're not
No.
loyal to anything.
Nope, I'm not loyal. I'm loyal to nothing.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Got that all fixed now. All straightened out. So today we're going to talk about unemployment, and that's something that for us is very personal because I went through that, and I know just in my talks with several people that going through that, most people are not prepared for that. They don't understand how that really affects you and what it does, and so we thought we would just kind of toss that around and talk about that a little bit. To kind of give some hope and some help. And I will say, before we even dive into the unemployment thing, one of the things that has really been interesting to me this past, 3 or 4 weeks is as we've really, we're diving in and doing these podcasts and we're teaching this marriage class. And the more that we do that, and it's so cliche and so super spiritual sounding, but the more that we find our marriage under attack and just, being more at each other's throats. Yep. And as much as that kills me, it also excites me because I know in times past when we've gone through things like this, I know that God's getting ready to elevate to another level. So there's some...
C.D. Jakes would say, new level, new devil.
That's right.
I've never heard that.
Or new devil, new level. I don't remember.
So the anticipation is somewhat there too. But yeah, so I encourage you, if you're fighting with your wife and your husband all the time, like we've been for the past 3-4 weeks, it's all good. It'll get better. You can work it out. So anyway.
Okay, before we get too into it, I do want to start out without talking about unemployment. So we have started Financial Peace University. Officially, we've lived sort of off and on it for the last couple of years. However, if we had the knowledge we have now, before the unemployment story, we may have had a different outcome. So I would encourage everyone, regardless of where you are financially, get the FPU information and figure out how to live your life where you're prepared for events when they happen. That's my little prequel to what you're going to say.
Yeah.
Because you never know, no job is completely guaranteed. And even if you own your own business, you're at a corporate America, you're even in retail, it is completely out there that it could be gone in an instant.
Absolutely.
And that's where, and we're not going to be talking about finances tonight, but you got to be prepared financially for that aspect.
Yeah, and sometimes even the most preparation still doesn't, you just never know. Yeah. And at the end of the day, what you have to fall back on always is that God is your provider, not man, not a job, not a circumstance. And that whatever season you're in it. You can't change winter before winter's over. So you just have to walk it out. Put the bread bags on your feet so your socks don't get wet and walk out in the snow. It's okay.
Right.
Because next week it'll be 74.
That's exactly.
So did you use bread bags in DC?
If I would have had bread bags, I would have, believe me. That Sunday when I went out, so just in case anybody is under a rock and didn't know, I was trapped in DC for an extra 3 days. Yeah. Anyway, so Friday at 10 o'clock in the morning was the last time I went out until Sunday at 12.
Wow.
So I was stuck in the hotel in between there. they got where I was at the hotel. We got 26 inches of snow. And on Sunday, I decided I was going to go. I'm like, I've got to get out of this place. I have to go get something to eat. So I was going to go to this place called Duke's Grocery, which is a little hole in the wall, but they're supposed to have amazing burgers. And, I'm a burger guy. So I take off, and it's only like, 9/10 of a mile away or something. It's like a 20-minute walk. So I take out in the,
in 26-inch snow.
which they have now plowed somewhat. And now on the sidewalks where I'm walking, it's like
More like
4 feet of snow.
It's a glacier.
Yeah. So I'm walking along, and I've got on my tennis shoes, which, they don't keep water out. They're CrossFit shoes. So, So I'm walking, and at first it's okay. The top's kind of hardened up a little bit, and I'm just walking on it. Well, all of a sudden I step down in.
Oh.
And then once I step down in, I realize that underneath that there's some slush water there, and it's all pouring into my shoe, and it's on my pants, like up past my knees. I'm like, So the 20-minute walk turns into a 30-minute walk. I get to the place, and there's a 30-minute wait.
Oh, no.
And there's really no place to wait inside. So I weasel my way inside up in the corner. And I'm just like, stuck up in the corner. But then they weren't even serving lunch. They just had brunch. And thank God they had a brunch burger, because I would have been so mad if I'd walked all that way for a burger and they didn't have it. And it was on time. It was a good burger. So, all right, unemployment.
So you can afford that burger.
Right. So I pulled up some stats, and this always interests me about unemployment, because the U.S. Department of Labor reports unemployment currently at 5.6% unemployment, which sounds
Big fat lie.
not so bad,
I don't
right?
think I believe that.
That's not bad, 5.6%.
You would think it's an election year.
Yeah.
You would.
Wait, it is.
But Forbes magazine reports, Forbes, which is a pretty liberal publication, reports what the number really is when you look at, let's see, let me tell you all these numbers here. Involuntary part-time workers,
So
marginally
hours cut for people that they can't help.
marginally attached to labor force workers, and additional unemployment workers with 66% participation rate. So the participation rate is the big thing. You have people now that aren't even looking for a job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a huge segment of people. So when you add all those up, the true unemployment rate is 15.8%.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
And that has lowered somewhat. I mean, it was up as high back in 2009 as 20 couple percent. So when you think about those numbers and you think about the population, that's, let's see, 26 million. I'm sorry, 26 million people. That's what that looks like, unemployed currently. There's a lot of stats on here, and they're all interesting, but
And people who just decide that they will keep their 28-hour-a-week job and not pursue anything that's full, or they're working two part-time
part-time
jobs or things
yeah.
like that. Yeah.
and the other thing too is you look at, minimum wage keeps going up higher and higher. And with a lot of companies, what's going to happen is just like McDonald's is starting to do, they're going to put computers at the front. Take your own order.
I saw that
and do
at
away.
Panera Bread.
Yeah.
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 Here's
Do
got it.
do away with the people. I mean, why not? If you can buy a $800,000 computer one time and get rid of a worker that over the course of the year you're going to pay several $1,000s.
Well, like in our area, I'm sure it's like this in a lot of areas, but Walmart closed down. A lot of, 5 in the mid-state area?
Oh.
I don't know.
didn't know that.
I knew they were closing some, but I didn't
Yeah,
know.
there was one on Gallatin Road, I think in Inglewood area.
I know there's a lot of children's places across the country closing too. Like a lot of them. Like a lot of different retail places are struggling, I think, right now. And I think that's part of it is the wage. And also, for instance, here's what minimum wage is intended to be. And I understand we all have different places in life where we end up at. But Cameron started at a local fast food place. Can I say Chick-fil-A? Are they going to get mad? Is their name?
We're not under regulation. FCC doesn't regulate this.
As long as they don't know. So she started there a couple of weeks ago, and she makes a hair over minimum wage. And I'm like, she's 16. It's her first job. That's what minimum wage
Right.
is intended for.
Yeah, that's what fast food
entry
restaurants are for,
level
yeah.
job. If she stays there and becomes a manager, if she goes to college, whatever else life holds for her, that's not the end goal for her job. So I get very
It's
frustrated.
to stay at that level.
Exactly. The whole point
40
is you
years.
don't live on it.
Yep.
It's a starting point to then become whatever the next thing is. And I feel like that is a whole nother argument with forcing minimum wage up. So
Yeah, for sure.
anyway.
But there's detrimental effects to that across the country. So Obamacare had detrimental effects to companies, minimum wage hikes. And I was telling Krystal, our company at our meeting last week, we have 75 economists on staff for us because they're forecasting for every area across the country. But our head economist is a genius. I mean, he truly is a genius. And he talked about how manufacturing rates are the lowest that they've been like since the Depression in the United States, where we're not manufacturing anything. We're becoming an import country. We're not exporting anything. We're not making hardly anything. Everything is imported, and our manufacturing rates just keep dropping.
That's a little scary.
It's extremely scary because that ultimately affects everything. We're so dependent on everything.
Everybody else, all the other countries.
Yeah.
And our economy can't become what it needs to become in strength if we're not exporters, if we're importing only. You can't, that doesn't work.
Yeah. So unemployment. So Jason and Jennifer don't have really any examples where, they've been out of work for any period of time.
Jason lost his job last summer and it was downsized, but thankfully he had enough time to find a new job, so we went straight from one to the other.
Yeah, but I haven't had. We have not had to deal with a long term. Try to find a job, and how do you provide for your family?
Yeah. So before we dive in,
Well, you don't.
so
God does.
Talk about, you guys were obviously, when that happened, you were in a good place spiritually and everything else. So talk about what your reaction was that to initially when you lost your job last year.
Initially, it was a punch in the gut.
Yeah, because we had no idea it was coming.
And so it was a matter of, okay, after the initial punch, feeling, it was kind of like, it was a few days.
Yeah, it took us a couple days to kind of get over the shock of it.
Yeah, and then it was kind of like, okay, it's go time. It's for me was to find a job, and so whatever it took, and how much dedication I put towards it, I did my best to do that, and that's something that she said when I was going through it that surprised her, because I'm not a huge go-getter. I'm not the one has huge ambitions. So with me taking the lead on that, really impressed her. But it was just kind of like it had to be done.
Yeah.
So
you're the provider. You got to do it.
A steady personality.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, I'm a steady person, and so I'm not the.
I'm kind of go with the flow.
You're the
laid back.
I was gonna say you're the lazy river.
Yes.
You flow and you're good. Yeah.
So with that, we had to make some choices, and luckily, we didn't obviously staying in a same career or in a particular location that we wanted to be in. Was kind of thrown out the window because it wasn't just a leisurely look for another job.
Right.
It was, I'll take whatever interview I could get at this point in time.
That has decent money.
So, we would then figure out what adjustments financially, if any, that we need to do. God blessed us with a job.
Making more money.
Making more money, a little bit farther out of a drive. But it's... But we didn't lose anything.
Yeah.
We didn't lose any time. Then we were sitting there wondering, when the next interview was going to come.
But the thing was that at the beginning of the year, we were praying that he would get a new job.
Yeah.
So this forced him out and made him get a new job.
But again, with your personality, maybe you wouldn't have leapt out on your own. So it's sort of a kick in the seat.
And it's exactly true, because last year when we were doing our fast, that was one thing for me to either do something different at the current job or find a new job. Mm-hmm. Well, it just took God to actually kick me out of the job for it to. So
no, it's so great.
So it is great. It was hard thing to transition through. And some people go through job to job without any issues. I'm a steady Eddie. I like consistencies.
Yeah.
So with that, it was a hard change, just mentally, physically, and everything. So it was luckily God did that, and now has, and He's opened up my eyes to go back to school, and so which is great. Something that I've kind of held back for years and has held us back financially because in this day and age, you need to have that piece of paper, and it's something that so now with the change, we're settled in. Now go back to school. It's really good. It's hard, but it's good.
And I can't remember the timeline. Did you find the house right before the job or right after?
Right after.
That's what I
So we were.
It's like it all kind of fell.
It just, it all just, God just worked out every single detail for us.
Amen. Love it.
And there are cases like that all the time where you lose your job and you don't miss a step and you move into the next thing, and it just sometimes I think in those situations it's exactly what you said. Without a prompting, you probably wouldn't have walked through a door because you're okay being where you're at. And so I think sometimes God uses that to say, okay, here. With us, it was a little bit different. And I think that, we talked a little bit about my unemployment in our testimony video, but we'll talk a little bit more in depth about kind of what we went through and what that process looked like and how it affected us and our relationship and our marriage. So back in 2000, and Jennifer is not peeing. She's pouring more coffee. For those of you not watching on YouTube. So back in 2007, Krystal was pregnant, and I was working as a marketing manager for a publishing company, Christian publishing company. Krystal was working for her family, and in January of 2007, they decided they were going to go into separate ministries. So her brothers and sisters were all splitting up and going different directions.
I think it was actually maybe the end of the year before that.
Before.
Like we knew along for quite a while that it was coming. So we were prepared.
So anyway, we knew that was coming, and we knew that Krystal was going to lose her job. Mm-hmm. And Krystal made good income. And
the same week we had a baby. We lost the job and had a baby the same week.
So we knew that was coming, and we were materialistic. Mm-hmm. I had a BMW. She had an Infiniti. We had big car payments, and
we downsized in that
we lived
time.
but we lived in a nice house, and we did what we wanted to do. So we did downsize. We cut our cable back and got rid of the Infiniti and got a minivan. And
I cried.
Krystal cried, and you were pregnant. So
I was pregnant.
But anyway, long story short, so we rolled through that. August comes, and August the 7th was actually the Crab family's last date, and August 8th, Sophie was born. And so she had Sophie, and her job was gone, and we were okay. We had money in the bank.
Brian had a good job.
I had a good job.
Felt like there was opportunity there, so it wasn't anything to freak out about.
Yeah.
Right?
And even though we weren't living the Dave Ramsey plan, we had some debt still and some other things. We had 3 to 6 months of savings.
Yeah. We still had a lot of debt.
Yeah. And so we rolled along, and we in January of 2008, I had just submitted my budget for my marketing budget for 2008 like 2 weeks before, and it had been approved, and everything was going well. It was the biggest marketing budget that company had ever had, and it didn't even really get an eyebrow raised. So, everything was good. And on a Friday afternoon, our CEO of our division said,
It's always a Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, it wasn't.
Oh, it wasn't?
He called all the managers in and said, we've got to cut $450,000 out of our budget. We've got, some issues, and we've got to get some money out of this budget. So we all worked to cut our budgets, and we all did, and we didn't get to $450,000, but we got a lot of the budget knocked out, anything that was non-essential. And then on Monday morning, one of the other managers of the company, who was right under our CEO, he was a VP level, called me in, and he was talking about this conference that we were doing. We had a magazine called Preaching Magazine. We did a conference. We had a conference scheduled in Virginia. Anyway, all the final designs for everything had just come in, and he was walking through them, and he was like, these are awesome. Your team did a great job. This is amazing, blah, blah, blah. He's like, you're not going to be able to go to the conference because you don't have a job anymore. And I was like,
oh.
So you do all that work, and then...
I'm like, what?
Did I hear you correctly?
Because it sounded like you just said you don't have a job anymore. And so I walked out, and...
So it wasn't like Donald Trump as,
You're fired.
No.
That's kind of a letdown.
Yeah.
I was hoping that's kind of what,
The
Yeah.
dramatic.
Okay.
Yeah, so they initially, in the first wave, they laid off 5 managers. to try to cut the money. And then the next wave, I think after me, were 19 people. And I mean, it just was chop. But anyway, so I came home and...
He actually called, I think, on his way home and said that he had lost his job. And I was like, what? Like, I was in disbelief. And I think I didn't really think you were being serious. I thought you were joking. I thought you were being funny. Ha, 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 you weren't. Nope, no humor at all. It was a bad day.
So I came home and we had no idea really what we were going to do.
We sat and looked at each other on the couch for 3 or 4 weeks, in sheer disbelief.
So I put out calls, I put out feelers, and 2008 is when the recession started. And
bottom fell out.
It didn't really completely fall out though till about April, time frame. Yeah. So this was January. So Krystal's stepdad and mom were in real estate, and they were doing really well. And so they said, "Why don't we get your real estate license and come work with us?" And I was like, "Yeah, the real estate market is okay. I'll do that." So I spent
because sales is your thing. You would have been great at that.
A chunk of money, and got my real estate license. I got my real estate license the last week of March. And in April, I started trying to sell houses. And guess what happened in April?
Nobody wanted a house.
The bottom fell out.
Right. So here's the lessons we learned from that. We should have put our house on the market in January.
Yeah.
And you should have maybe held off on the license. That's what our hindsight said.
It was bad.
We should have listed the house in January.
So this is April now. So I've been out of work for 3 months. Krystal's been out of work for 9 months or 8 months, whatever. And we tried to refinance our house. Our house payment was $2,000 and change, which before that day didn't seem like that much, but all of a sudden
that's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money,
right?
You have nothing coming in.
It's a lot. And so we tried to refinance the house, and we had lost $60-some thousand equity in the house. So we were in the hole in the house now. Couldn't refinance the house. And the whole time I'm looking for work. I mean, by June, I had been to every pizza place. I had been to Kroger. I had been to Demas's. I had been any place I could find to try to pick up part-time jobs and do anything, and nobody was hiring.
Do you think the door was just shut? That God shut the door?
I don't know. I mean, to this day, I still look back and try to figure out all the things from it. I think the biggest thing, honestly, was God just wanted us to rely on Him. I think we were so self-reliant. I think we were in church, and we were, for the most part, where we were supposed to be, but I think we were relying on ourselves because we were solvent. We had money. And so I think we relied way too much on ourselves.
I think our personalities, too. That tends to be our mindset regardless. We could do it.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you were going to cry or something. No,
you should let it happen or stop.
Look in the light.
So during this whole time, Krystal had went back to work retail like in February. I had been home a month, and
this is when Indian Lake, the shops in Indian Lake, it was first opening up, and there was a clothing store there, and I randomly applied for a job and got hired as a part-time. I don't remember even if I was an assistant manager or...
No, you were just a retail associate.
I was like, okay, he can't find work. I've got to do something to help. Yeah. So I went back to work for $9 an hour part-time. And I was working about 20 hours a week.
Yeah.
And that's where my journey back to work started in the retail world.
Yeah.
$9 an hour.
$9 an hour.
$9 an hour.
You got to start somewhere.
That's right.
Hey, you know what?
It doesn't get you very far, though.
I was happy about that $9 an hour.
Yeah, for sure. And I was... doing any kind of contract work that I could. There was a few things that I went back and did for the company I'd worked for on a contract basis. I went and traveled with some of her family doing child sponsorships on the weekends. And so anything that we could do to make a buck, we did. Short of illegal things. We didn't do any illegal things.
Although I think we probably talked about it.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I don't think we ever did it. And in this time, so you have, I think the BMW had to have repairs, the van. It was like... It wasn't just one thing. It was
everything closing in on you at one time.
Everything. It was everything.
And you feel like you're getting suffocated.
Yes, absolutely.
And listen, I'm going to tell you what. Even though you got $40,000 in the bank, when you're paying a $2,000 house note, you're paying $500 car payment. You're paying all these things.
Repairs.
That money doesn't last at all. So, I mean, we bled through that money, and I think we were probably out of savings by midsummer. You know,
It
and
was maybe, I don't remember. I think I blocked it out.
and up until that point, we weren't behind on any of our bills. We had stayed, you know, current with all of our payments and everything else. And then we couldn't get refinanced on the house. And then we tried to do the modification, you know, that because everybody was starting to get behind on their loans. So we tried to get our loan modified. And over the course of 18 months, and I'm not even joking, this is not an exaggeration when I tell you that I faxed well over 1,000 pages of documentation.
Easily.
Yeah.
Over the course of time between bank statements and, you know, just different things to try to get our loan modified. It just never happened. I mean, we never could get our loan modified, couldn't get anything changed. In the process, they told us we had to get 90 days behind on our mortgage before they would even let us think about getting qualified. So we did that.
We're like, woohoo, grocery money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we did that. And then they said, well, now we won't take your payments because you're too far behind. You either have to make a lump sum payment or, you know, you have to pay the full note.
Or you didn't fax page 17, or
Yeah.
you didn't sign on the right
I mean, it was.
one,
I
you
talked to them
didn't
every
initial.
week, 3 or 4 times a week, and it was you didn't do this or we need this, and so
And we
This is bad as
actually,
creditors, I'm sure.
it was bad.
Here's what's funny about this 5 years, 6 years later, however long it's been, is we got a letter in the mail, a month or so ago, that there's a class action lawsuit against the company for the way
it's a
that
mortgage
they handled
company? Wow.
all
Yeah, they
of
were an
the-
abusive mortgage company.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they didn't handle
follow
the
the
process the way
guidelines.
that they were supposed to. So, you know, maybe there'll be some justice there somewhere. Because I'm sure there are what breaks my heart is I'm sure there were other people that, I mean, just a little bit of help along the way would have gone a long way in the long run. And
But you guys have, God's blessed you guys and bounced back. There are some people out there who never bounce back,
No,
and
not at
probably
all.
will never bounce back, unfortunately,
That's devastating.
through that.
So through that whole process, one of the things that I really want to draw out and point out is, I mean, it was a bad time
How long were you without a job? Did you say that?
from
yet?
January until September.
September.
And in September, I took a job that I knew wasn't a long-term job. It was literally making a third of what I made before.
But it was a job.
But it was a job. And I had a company car. So that was a bonus.
That helps.
Yeah.
I don't
It
even
did.
remember that.
Yeah. Remember that burgundy Nissan Xterra?
Vaguely.
Yeah.
Vaguely I do.
So we sold the BMW immediately.
Yes. We're like,
Got rid of
get
that.
Yeah.
Money trap.
And had a company car and then that. And I stayed with that company, I think, 4 months. It was so bad. The company was just a bad company. But anyway, so then I had to give the company car back, and all of a sudden I didn't have a car. So we...
We've had a lot of good cars. This has been a fun journey.
I took another job with a record label that ended up not being a long-term job either. I mean, dear God, so many bad things. But took a job with a record company for a promising job. I mean, it seemed like it was going to be great. And
I'm just gonna keep all my thoughts right here inside my head.
I didn't have a car, so her grandmother at that point had stopped driving. She could no longer drive.
Well, she didn't voluntarily stop driving, but
Yeah.
I think that basically
She
they
had
took
ripped the
car
side
away
of the
from
house
her.
off several times down the side. So
She was like, I haven't hit anything. Like, both sides are scraped up.
it was it was like a 12-year-old Cadillac DeVille, like
It
the
was
big
awesome.
DeVille.
Wow.
It was like a boat. It floated.
That's like when you park at the very end of the parking lot because you're
love
too
it.
scared to park in between the cars.
So we got that car.
He would
and-
barrel around in that sucker too.
Yeah. So we had that car for about 4 or 5 months,
I
and
think we had it longer than that, didn't we? I don't remember. We should have written all this down.
no, the transmission started.
We're like,
It
oh,
was
heck no.
like all the
Oh,
transmissions
no.
going in this car, and I'm like, we've got to do something. And so, in the process, it's just funny how God works. Krystal and her sister had bought her dad a truck years before, in 2006, 2 years before, and then her brother-in-law got the truck, and he had it, and he was done with the truck and didn't want the truck, and the truck was paid for, and so he was like, we don't want the truck, we're getting another car, you can have the truck. So I'm like, oh, thank you, Jesus, we have a car.
Yeah.
So then we got the truck, and then so we were really at a bad place financially. I mean, even though I was working, we'd gotten so far behind on our bills.
You're starting to get caught up.
It was bad news. And so
just the stress level. I don't think, if you haven't ever been in that situation, which again, statistically, 70% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. So I would say a good portion of people have been in that situation. If anything goes wrong, you don't have a contingency plan. But I mean, the pressure that builds up, I mean, it is the stress and anxiety. It's overwhelming.
So I take the car, and the car, realistically, I mean, in great shape, the car's worth $2,200. I mean, it's, a 12-year-old Cadillac that's got, issues, and the transmission's bad. So I literally left here.
I think we prayed that it wouldn't slip.
And I that was my prayer. I said, God, I'm not trying to sham anybody, but CarMax can handle a car with a bad transmission. Can you please, when they test drive this car, let it be fine?
Sorry, CarMax.
And they drove the car and came back in, and they gave us $2,100 for that car.
Crazy.
That's awesome.
They did.
And that $2,100 literally
Went a long way.
Yeah. And we had family that helped us and supported us and gave us money and did things for us when we couldn't do. We had the low point, and we've talked about was when we came home from church on Wednesday night. We had groceries setting on our front steps.
I didn't think anybody knew. Like, I didn't want anybody to know. I'm very private about our business, or I used to be. I mean, it doesn't do any good anymore to be private or not private. But I had no idea people knew, so I was just like, oh my Lord, who in the world knows what's going on?
Did you ever find out who it was?
Nope, no idea.
If it was you, tell us. So anyway, all that happened. And to kind of give you to pull this into marriage and how this affects a marriage, to kind of give you an idea of what we were going through in our home. Krystal had ramped up. At this point, she was a manager of retail.
I took a very low salary managing because that's what they offered. And it was, I needed it bad enough that I had to take it. So when you averaged out that number of hours I was working and what I was making, it was ridiculously small per hour, the amount of money I was actually making.
And the hits didn't stop.
No.
Krystal wasn't making great money, but at the time she was making better money than I was working retail. And she was working, honest to God, 70, 80 hours a week. And Edie was 16, and she was helping me take care of the kids. By this point, I'm working 2 jobs. I was working on the weekends, and I was working a regular job Monday through Friday. And then on the weekends when I could get off, I would still go travel with her family and do dates for the World Vision stuff, whatever, Holt. And so Krystal gets pancreatitis and is in the hospital for
Oh, no.
Which this
7
is several
days.
years in.
No, it was the next year.
Was it the next year?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
And so I'm working 7 days. It's Easter. It's the week of Easter. Krystal's in the hospital about to die, and all she's concerned about is getting back to work because she's like, I can't lose my job. I can't lose my job. And, I mean, so it was literally
I just taken a different location. I just started at a higher volume store.
So, it was hit after hit after hit. Then, fast forward a little bit, the flood happened. And Krystal's store was in Opry Mills Mall, and so her store was gone, and so we had no idea what was going to happen there. I mean, so it wasn't like we had a hit and then things started getting better. It was we just kept getting beat and beat and beat, and through all that, the worthlessness as a man that you feel when you know that you can't provide for your family is still to this day something that I cannot explain to you. The feeling of it, the hopelessness. That you have in the flesh is it's just almost more than you can take, and I would have to separate myself from what I felt and what I knew, and the only thing that I knew was God's word, and I would have to ground myself in Jeremiah 29:11. I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and to grow you, never to harm you, and so I would just all day long I would pray scripture, and that's what I would do. And I would Romans 8:28, all things work for my good and for God's glory. And I know that. So all this has to be for my good and God's glory. It doesn't look like it, it doesn't feel like it, but I know that, and I know that God's word's infallible, and I know that it's truth. So I have to stand on that. So I would write post-it notes all day that said God is in control, and I would say that. I mean, I was a crazy person. if anybody would have been in the house, they'd have been like, "What's wrong with him?" Because I would walk around. God is in control. God has a plan.
And I think I was probably
God is in control.
rolling my eyes at this point because I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And so through all that, we ended up filing bankruptcy, losing our house. It was a bad mess. It was just a bad deal. And the effects of that are far-reaching. That still today are far-reaching. But the thing that I want to encourage people that are listening, men especially, I know it affects women differently, and Krystal can speak to that in just a minute, but men especially that are listening that have lost their job, and they're the provider, and they feel worthless and hopeless and helpless. There are blooms and blessings along that path that you have to pick up and you have to hold on to keep your sanity. And looking back now, it's easier to see those things than they were in the minute, but it's not because they weren't happening in the minute and I just didn't pay attention. They were there. I just wasn't tuned into it. I was talking to a guy the other day about, our relationship with God is very much like an old dial radio where you've got to tune it in to where you can hear his voice the clearest. And sometimes we've got to get to that low place to find, that where you dial that in at and get that perfect sound where you hear God's voice. And most of the time, it takes those moments of just being beat down low to be able to do that. Mm-hmm. And looking back now, the blessings that I can tell you about that I know for sure that still amaze me to this day. We never paid for any formula for Sophie. Mm-hmm. We had a great friend whose dad worked for a company that got the dented cans and like clockwork.
Missing labels. Yeah. Not even kidding. We would get cases and cases, and we didn't even know what most of it. I'm like, there's no label, but it'll be fine. She took every kind of formula that this company made.
Yeah.
And they make 10 different ones, and she never had any issues. She took it all. No problems.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was pretty amazing.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, every month, like clockwork, they would, and we didn't have to go get them. They brought them to us.
And sometimes it would be cases and cases at a time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's a good feeling.
Oh, gosh.
Never paid for formula.
When she quit taking formula, we had about 5 or 6 cases left in the garage that we gave to somebody. I don't even remember what we did with them, but yeah. It was a hodgepodge, probably.
It was.
Don't pay attention to the dentist or the missing labels. It'll be fine.
The thing, though, that probably hands down was the biggest blessing, because I didn't get to experience Edie and Cameron growing up. I wasn't there for them as babies. And so with Sophie, I was there from January until September with her every single day. I was her main caregiver, and so I got to experience all the things that I hadn't, and things that I wouldn't have been able to had I been in a job and she would have been in daycare. Mm-hmm. So I mean,
and
all
Lord
that
knows
stuff.
we could not afford a daycare.
Oh my God!
And Tennessee's unemployment rate. There's no way.
$275, no matter how much you make. Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't want you to stay on it long.
We had looked into that when we knew he was losing his job, and I was like, we can't. That's nothing.
It's a little meager.
Yeah.
And do you know what my prideful self said? Initially, it was like, I'll get a job. I'm not going to have to worry about $275 a week. And then by September, let me tell you what, that $275 a week was precious.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, if we're careful, we can have beans and rice this week.
And diapers.
And diapers.
We potty
don't have to wash those out.
Yeah.
So that time is something that I would never, exchange even for the hurt and the pain that we went through. So talk from your perspective what it's like being a wife and the emotions and things that you went through.
Well, I mean, it's obviously horrible in that I think that we have a need for a sense of stability, and there's fear, and I think it creeps into your mind, and you, depending on your personality. I know for me, I just constantly rolled it around in my mind, this unknowing and fear and just the lack of feeling like there was a plan and an answer, which is what I need in life, is an answer. So it was a hard time. And then I struggled when I did start working, and I was working a lot. I was angry because I was at work all the time and I wasn't able to be a mom. I would go 2 days without seeing the kids sometimes, just because of scheduling and school and stuff. So I would get bitter and angry, and I wasn't necessarily angry at him. I was angry at the situation. I was angry that that we were in a place where this was kind of where we had ended up at.
But it came out as anger to me.
It probably did, yeah. And I'm really good at that.
Showing
I don't
the
think it was probably. I think it did.
Yes, it did. And in that, just I think if you're a wife and you have a husband who is unemployed, or vice versa, but definitely to that male perspective and psyche, be very cautious how you handle yourself, because you're probably heaping coals on the furnace without being aware, or B, it's doing more damage than you realize in your anger and frustration. So take it to the Lord, take it to a Christian friend that you can, pray with, that can help you talk and counsel through it. But just be cautious how much that you do heap on, because of the fact that it's hard. The recovery process is hard and it takes longer. So I think that there's a lot of caution there. One of the things I remember is when Sophie turned, I don't remember if she was 1 or 2, when we got her that plastic playground set out back. And we got it off Craigslist for like $60 or eBay or whatever it was back then.
It was less than that.
It was like nothing. And they were like a couple of $100s. It was the ones that had the slide and like the little thing you could climb under and
the
over.
Plastic little tights.
I was like, yes, and it almost looks brand new. We cleaned that sucker up.
That's awesome.
Little things like that, you know. And then I think the best thing that comes out on the other side of it is you realize that your perspective, it's
forever changed.
If you've never been there, your perspective is probably very messed up of what's important and what's not. The things that we think are important, they're not at the end of the day. As long as you've got your family and your kids and you can read a book or play a game or do something, all the rest of it is just kind of window dressing. It's not a necessity. So,
And Krystal would make comments all the time. I just wish I could have one new pair of shoes, or I wish I could have this purse.
Because I started working,
or
I didn't have any
have
work clothes. So I was like going to Goodwill and praying to God on the half price Saturday that I could find 2 or 3 things that would work, because I had nothing for the environment that I was in. So I wouldn't realize in saying that what he was hearing. What I was saying is not what he was hearing. They were 2 very different things.
Because there's a lot going on in his mind.
Absolutely.
That feeling that I can't provide. Yeah. And then that is that coals on the fire.
Absolutely.
that you're starting to rise up and I totally agree with that. You hear women or wives all the time tearing down their husbands, and even to just acquaintances, and that's festered in their hearts, and that that's got to come out in their personal life. Yep. And so I think probably the biggest thing I would suggest as a spouse, either man or woman, is be careful with what you say and how you say it, because that person who's looking for the job hopefully is doing their part, and hopefully they are. And if they're not, do they really truly deserve it? But that's another topic.
Yeah.
But yes, as a man, God has put the desire to provide for your family in your hearts, and that's your sole being is to provide for your family.
Or it should be anyway.
Or it should be. Yes,
absolutely.
So not all men are out there. If you are one of those,
please email or phone in.
That's right.
I'm trying to think if there was something else I was going to say about all that, and I've forgotten what it was.
Well, I know, and this is not along this. We've not been in that situation, but I've been at my job for 5 years, and the job I had before that was literally like hell every day going to work. I hated it. It was a terrible environment, and I would cry every day. I hated it, but we were stuck. I had to have it, and so when I started looking for a new job was when we resolved to get our finances in order, because I was like, we were never going to be in that place again.
Yeah.
I was never going to do that again.
Absolutely.
So the stress that it brings on you, that type of situation that you have to have this money, and you got to put yourself in that position.
You become a slave to it.
You do, yeah. And I think that was a turning point in where we started doing our finances better. We're like, we're never.
Well, that's why financial peace is so important, because it truly is peace. When you know, okay, you know what? If I lose this job tomorrow, I know something else is going to come up, and I've got reserves back here to take care of it. Living paycheck to paycheck, and well, for a while we weren't even living paycheck to paycheck.
We were living half a paycheck to half a paycheck. It was bad.
I mean, I never thought I would be at the place where we would have to sit down and have a serious discussion about okay, we can't drive this car this week. You're going to have to go, and I can't do anything till you get home, or you have to stop on your way. And, there would be times where we'd have to calculate, I've got an interview, so I'm going to have to, go with you to work and drop you off and go to the interview and then come back and just wait for you. We can't drive the car out 3 times in one day.
Right.
I mean, that kind of, and you never think you're going to be there in life.
You take that stuff for granted.
You do.
Yeah.
And, I think that it's so lost, and I think that unemployment probably is one of those things, like sexual sin or anything else, that people don't want to talk about in the church. They don't really want to deal with it. It's if you're not, you get people who have the mentality, you can find a job. Well, no, you can't always. And
especially in a down economy.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, he's a hustler.
Yeah.
He's a hustler. So,
but I mean, I understand. Initially, I didn't go to Papa John's. I didn't go to those places because I was like, I can get a job. And then when I realized I couldn't get a job, I mean, I honest to God, went to every place within a 15-mile radius.
I would say, well, have you tried this place and this? And he was like, yes, like twice. Based on, there were a lot of different things that it was crazy. So.
Yeah, it was bad. So anyway, be encouraged. I mean, there is hope. And I tell you, the reason unemployment, even before I found out our friend was going through that, is so important to me is because I've been there. We've lived through it, and we've come out the other side of it. And it so does affect a marriage. I think unemployment is one of those things that can destroy a marriage completely because you let the enemy get in between you, and all of a sudden your spouse becomes your enemy.
In your mind. The enemy's in your mind.
Unemployment or any financial strain, I think that just magnifies it. It makes it that much more obvious and quick.
Yeah.
It can turn on a dime, I think, when you go through that.
Yeah, because you don't make rash decisions when you're frustrated, and from a female perspective, when you don't feel secure and you feel like the person who's supposed to help provide that security is not, then all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, I can probably be more secure without you. I can figure out how to make this work without you. And so, you've got to put God first in that, and you've got to realize God is in control and that God does have a plan and a purpose, and it's not to harm you. And you've got to hold on to those things and not take for granted that that God does have a plan that you can't see. And I say all the time, you know what? God loves me more than I love my kids, which is hard for me to fathom. And God's already lived my tomorrow. So if God's okay with my tomorrow, then I know my tomorrow is going to be okay, And I told Krystal all the time through that, I'd be like, listen, they can't take our family. They can take our house. At that point, they couldn't take our cars because we didn't have any cars that weren't paid for. They can't take our house. They can't take our cars. They can't take our clothes. So we know enough people. We can crash on somebody's couch if we have to, But
it seems so much more overwhelming than that
it does.
At the moment.
It does.
Right.
You can't think.
When you don't
walking
know
in
the
it.
ending.
Exactly.
And you're not thinking rationally, and you're not thinking, well, I can do this. And when you get everything crashing down or suffocating,
and you're trying to problem solve, and there's
Right.
It's
there's
just
no
out of
solution.
fear. Everything's out of fear. Yeah.
Listen, it was so bad they had stopped paying for plasma. They used to pay for plasma, and I couldn't even donate plasma because they stopped paying for it. I was trying to do everything that I could do. There were too many people donating plasma for money. Like, no.
Because everybody was
Like,
looking for a
no.
job.
Yeah.
Like, we got extra. I have a couple of things to say. Number one is when we started Financial Peace, one of the things that I think it was the first week in the first lesson, he talks about how contentment is a spiritual principle. And if you're going through this and you only have 2 pairs of work pants, be content with that. Be content with where you are in the moment and make it the best you can, knowing that it's not where you're going to stay at. Just be patient and work to be content. And secondly, the other big thing I think came out of it is we realized we have really great kids. They never complained. They never asked for anything. They knew we couldn't afford it. Like they were just, Edie and Cameron were great through the whole process. And that's where I think Edie really, she realized how important hard work is. And she's one of the hardest working people that I know today because of it. I mean, she worked her hind end off as a teenager. And I mean, she paid for everything she did. So it was a huge thing to see how they handled it versus what the other side could have been. So.
Yeah, and truly, Edie was such a help, and Cameron, Cameron's heart is so big, but Cameron would I think a lot of times she wouldn't even tell us about things that she needed to do because she just didn't want to wait that on.
That's
and we would say, well, we can't do this. She's like, I know, and it's fine. I don't even need that. I mean, it was.
Doesn't that break your heart?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. If she was a bratty kid, it wouldn't be as bad. She's so sweet.
Yeah.
It made it worse.
Yeah, for sure. So, all right. Well, that's that.
It's kind of a depressing topic.
It is,
little
but there's hope.
There
Here's
is
the
hope.
thing, and we're not even completely rebounded from all of it yet.
No.
But I will say that God closes the right doors and opens the right doors at the right times, and it was for a lesson for us. Family became so much more important. We weren't as concerned with the stuff. It didn't matter as much. We would sit down and play games as a family more. We spent more time, and the time that we did get to spend, because Chris was working so much, was quality time. It wasn't the quantity of time. Whereas before, we may all be in the same house for 4 hours a day.
Everybody spread out.
But you're not paying attention to each other. And so we started making that time count and make it important.
And again, at the end of the day, all this stuff is hay and stubble. It's and then there's no eternal value in anything that you can put your hands on. And it's like we place so much worldly value on it, but there's zero eternal value. None.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, so if
That's
you're,
our real world, right? We're just passing through this one. Is that right?
that's right.
I'm just making sure.
So if you're unemployed or underemployed, even, because I went through 3 years of underemployment where, I just wasn't making, there were days I was like, it's stupid for me to work.
Yeah.
What we're paying, in daycare and everything else, I'm like, this is not
better.
profitable.
Right.
and what's so crazy is then, and this is to anybody who's potentially in charge of hiring. So then, he's job hopping, trying to hop his way up in pay. And then you reach a place where they say, oh, you've had too many jobs. And it's
Right.
like, we can't afford rice and beans on these other jobs.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
surely to God, anybody can understand that. So it created some interesting after problems. So
And I will say,
trying to better.
I believe that people from time to time need government assistance. If you just can't.
Absolutely.
But I'll tell you, at a time where
we couldn't get it.
no, we did at first qualify. That first year, we more than qualified.
But
we
we
were
didn't.
$40,000 under the mark of where we had to be considered poverty, and we chose not to do that. And there were some scholarship things for the girls for different things school wise that we couldn't qualify for the next year. And I'm like, oh my God, we're below the poverty level in the U.S. and we can't qualify for $50 help for a school trip. So anyway, if you're unemployed, reach out to us. We're always happy to help and to talk and to do whatever. So check us out, sundayeveningcoffee.com, and email us, sundayeveningcoffee@gmail.com. Keep up with us on Facebook and Twitter and Periscope. And we'll see you next time on Sunday Evening Coffee.